All right. Well, good morning, everyone.
Good
Morning.
Morning.
So, last time we talked about Isaac's kind of main character story where he becomes an actor, and now it very quickly shifts to his two sons and the drama between them. A little bit of setup just so we kind of know where we're going. I mean, we've kind of talked about the different sections of Genesis as it's moved from genre to genre to genre. And we had a long section of Abraham. Now the next really big section is going to be Jacob and what's considered the Jacob cycle. So there's a lot that is in this, and there's in this chapter in particular, there's a lot of details of the way things happen that we will see echoes of for the next 3 or 4 chapters. So if you see me focusing on a detail, it's likely because it's gonna come back around. And when I was taught this, it was literally like in a rainbow fashion where it's like, this thing happened and this correlates here, and this happens and this correlates here. And so the way that scholars talk about it is the Jacob cycle, and the things that happen at the beginning of the story get echoed at the very end of the story. The things that happen midway through the story get echoed midway through the end of the story if you see how it works.
Okay.
So a lot of this information we need to keep in our back pockets.
Okay.
But from there, let's go ahead and jump in. We've kind of talked about the persona of Jacob and Esau when they were first born, and the first story of Jacob's kind of bartering away Esau's inheritance. Now we see the blessing. And these are the two things that the firstborn child gets. You get all the stuff and the patriarch blesses you. And so this is the last claim that Esau has to being the eldest son, is the blessing. What's our initial, just read and finished it, what's our initial opinions of this whole situation and deception and the dynamic between these two brothers? What are you all thinking about the story overall?
Jacob wins again.
Sorry, what did you say?
Jacob wins again.
He wins again. Yeah, he's very crafty. But you know, he's so much more competent than Esau. So it's too bad he had to be deceptive to get it. Because, you know, Esau is kind of I'm not sure, it doesn't seem very bright. And maybe he got all tired out by, fighting to get out of the womb first. But it makes Jacob not seem to have a good character. These are the end justifies the means.
Yeah. But he's got a pushy mother too.
Yes, he does have a pushy mother.
Yeah. Mary Ellen?
I can't believe how easily Isaac was deceived. And surely just, knowing someone by voice when you're blind, I mean, that's your big clue. And I mean, I'm just mind boggled that that Jacob pulled this off. So.
Well, in the commentary, it says, well, maybe he really knew that which brother it was, and he wanted him. So he went along with the deception because he was ordained by God from the beginning. Now, that doesn't make any sense because they didn't think about God then, but that's one of the suggestions in one of the interpretations.
All right.
Yeah. But once again, we kind of see Isaac is a little bit of a wet noodle.
Yes.
Or what another commentary that I was reading was like, we see once again, he is guided by his stomach more than anything else. So yeah, there's what was
I
that,
wondered
Sue?
if Esau was not as good a cook as
yeah, we'll focus in on that detail a little bit of like, was this a reasonable ask actually? Any other initial takes of the story overview?
Well, just the fact that Jacob can lie outright.
Mm-hmm.
Is,
Yeah. So this is where I say, make sure we are keeping the details of this in mind, because everything that Jacob does, Jacob will also receive. Like, while it seems like at the initial outset of the story that Jacob gets away with it. I mean, we started by saying Jacob wins again. Jacob will not always win. Jacob lies and he will be lied to. And so there's it's an interesting thing of thinking about, is there justice in this story, or what does justice look like? What does repercussions look like? And if they're not immediately felt, how does justice play out in the end? So keep all of that in mind. Let's go ahead and jump into the very beginning, where we see at the beginning of the chapter, verse 1, we see the whole setup of the story and the whole reason they're able to pull it off in the at all. And it says that Isaac was old and his eyes were dim, so he could not see. And we have this kind of setup that he knows he's close to death. And so he's going to go ahead and bless his sons, or bless his son, singular. He's going to bless Esau or kind of like, if you remember Abraham, right before he died, he blesses Isaac, and then he passes away, and then the patriarchal blessing transfers over. Isaac's trying to do the same thing. We've kind of like zoomed through to the end of his life, and now he's like, I want to transfer the patriarchal blessing before I'm passed away. And so he gives Esau the task of go out, find me the game that I like. So we've already heard that he likes the wild food. And he says, cook me a dinner that I like. So what are some of the built-in assumptions about this request? Because it's interesting. What is kind of the framework that Isaac is already setting up in this request?
I guess he's asking his son to do what I gather from the story before he's already been doing. Esau was an outdoorsman, he was a hunter, so he asked him to do something that he knows Esau should be able to do. And if he accomplishes that, then I guess he's planning to give him the fatherly blessing.
Mm-hmm.
well, he specifically mentions quiver and your bow. Does Jacob also have one of those? Or does Jacob just have books or whatever? So is he automatically assuming that it is Esau? And is Esau the only one with a quiver and a bow? I don't know.
Well, the other thing that occurs to me is, it doesn't wild game taste different from the stuff that you go out if you kill a goat, or I can't remember, it was a goat or
It was a goat.
It was a goat. They don't, does that taste the same as, I don't know. I mean,
She
thought
seasoned
that-
it up though.
Well, if you put a lot of spices on it, maybe, yeah.
So I think you all are getting at two key points here. So first of all, the request is something we know that Isaac is good at. Yes.
Yes.
Or not Isaac, Esau. Sorry. This is the point of the Bible where the names get very jumbled for me, unfortunately. All right, Esau. So Esau, go do the thing that you're really good at, is kind of the request. You're a hunter, do the hunter thing. I want you to do the thing that I know you love to do. And so like, be excellent almost, and then come back and give me part of it. So yeah, this is well within Esau's skill set.
Yeah.
I don't know if Jacob's a hunter. We don't know if he has a quiver and bow, but what we know is this is the thing that Esau excels at. But the other side of it is, yeah, a wild game does taste different than, than a domesticated animal. I think their domesticated animals would still taste very gamey to us today, but that's because our meat is fed on mostly corn. And it's kind of funny. We get venison from Logan's family because hunters rent their land just to hunt. And that venison is some of the least gamey stuff I've ever eaten because the venison eats soybean and corn.
Yeah.
Because it's all cornfields. This is kind of funny. So that's actually more probably the flavor profile of the domesticated animals. But yes, they should taste different. But cuisine at the time was very sauce-based. I've seen some interesting studies that, or some, not studies, but like anthropology and historians, that when you cook things like you stew them, it is the best way to preserve the most amount of calories, because they're in a society where, if anything, you're in a calorie deficit and you're trying to eat all the fat so you have enough energy to not die. And so stewing it is a way to catch all the fats for the gravy. So, hey, Mary Ellen. So stewing the meat, creating a sauce is a good way to like use all of it. So this is like, no matter if it's wild or if it's domesticated, there probably is spices and some kind of sauce that it's steeped in. Theoretically, though, he should be able to tell the difference. But
Also, didn't
Yeah,
he tell Esau to go get a deer, and Jacob brought rabbit.
No, not rabbit. Wasn't it?
He brought something besides deer, I thought.
From the flock. Goats.
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 It's a goat, yeah.
The sauce must make everything taste the same.
Or similar enough. So there's one more detail that I do find interesting, is that the request is make the food that I like. Which requires both some kind of cooking skills, which is actually not Esau's strong point. His strong point is getting the food, but it also requires knowing what your dad's favorite food is. And for that, who is the best person in the family structure for knowing who likes what food and for cooking?
Rebecca.
Rebecca, right. Which brings us to the next part, where Rebecca evidently has ears in the house because she overhears this conversation. And while Isaac is kind of a wet noodle, Rebecca is a very active person in this story. She wants to exert her will, for better or for worse, in the ways that she knows how. So what do you all think about her interfering with her husband's intentions and kind of working around him to get what she wants?
Devious.
Well, they sort of said from the get-go that Isaac favored Esau while Rebecca favored Jacob. So Jacob is sort of her boy, and she wants the best for him.
I wonder why Rebecca chose Jacob as her. Well, he hung out in the kitchen.
Yeah, Mary Ellen?
I remember discussing the two sons previously, where we talked about Esau being the hunter, being the provider, being the one who was outdoors doing his things solo-wise, going hunting, whatever. And that Jacob was the homebody, who, worked in the kitchen, provided, the food, whatever. But as far as their leadership skills go, we discussed this before, where Esau really didn't have the skills to continue the community. And Jacob hopefully did. I don't know if we can prove that he did, but he had more potential to have the skill base to continue what Abraham and Isaac have done. So I don't know how she plays into that, whether she recognized that difference, or whether there's more behind what she's done. But, between the two men now, Esau really didn't have, to this point, I don't know when it's coming, the leadership skills. So even though he got locked out twice from the blessings, and he got, kind of passed over and whatever, this may be for the better in the long run.
Yeah, go for it, Larry.
Well, one can also make a point in that age and in that place. What the country needs is a fighter. The country needs someone that is able to do war. It doesn't need a homebody to sit quietly while all the other tribes take everything. So maybe the better thing for the community at that time would be Esau.
Mhm. Well, maybe he wasn't good at strategy, though. He could fight, but he had to have someone to tell him what to do.
Yeah,
He was
well,
general.
if you got a big enough club, you don't need a lot of strategy.
Well, it almost seems to me as though they're just disobeying God here. God takes care of those things, and they don't have to worry about who's the best leader, who's this, the best that. They're taking over God's job, I think. And there was another thing here, how devious the mother is in putting the goat's furry skin on his wrists. And I mean, she was really going to great lengths, and so was he. And I just think they're just not obeying God. And whatever comes to them, then that's probably the natural response in life.
So that's actually, thanks Helen for bringing it up, because it's a fascinating question in this story of where is God and God's guidance in this story. So put your finger there, and flip back to chapter 25. I'm looking at verse 23. The thing that is said when the two boys are born is, 2 nations are in your womb, 2 peoples born of you shall be divided. One shall be stronger than the other, and the elder shall serve the younger.
So Rebecca was just the hands and feet of God.
He's fulfilling the prophecy.
Yeah, it's interesting. We don't know if, once again, when it says, the Lord said, we don't know if this is Rebecca just had a direct line to God and heard the voice in her head and had this explanation and said, God spoke to me in prayer, and she's the only one privy to this, or if it was an audible voice where the whole room heard, but we have this oracle before they're born. And at a certain point, is she actually following God's oracle to her by promoting the younger?
Hard to say.
All we needed would have been one verse before she did all of this that said, and Rebecca remembered what the Lord said to her. We had that one sentence.
It's a good excuse.
Talking this over.
Well, I think God was predicting what would happen, but not necessarily the way even God wanted it to happen.
Yeah.
Mhm. Right. So the one last detail that I'm going to pull in for the full dynamics of this, do you all remember the verse just before this that we ended on last time? It's commentary on Esau and Rebecca's opinion on Esau's choices. Look at 26 verse 24 or 34.
Yeah. Made life bitter.
Oh,
You can't forget that Esau married 2 women that Rebecca did not like.
Right.
very.
Okay, that's good.
And so immediately, the next story, Esau marries 2 women that make her life bitter. She's not happy about it. Next verse, Isaac wants to bless Esau, and Rebecca says, "No, you're not." Yeah, Mary Ellen, check your mute too.
There's also the fact that Esau married Hittite women.
Mhm.
Where's this much?
And I kind of looked ahead a little bit, and they were definitely against bringing the Hittite bloodline into the Isaac genealogy. So there's that too.
Right. We get that detail at the very end of the story of the which is we can talk about it when we get to that, but we get, once again, it's brought up at the end of the story that we don't like that Esau married Hittite women. We're gonna change this. So so we have this whole scheme that Rebecca hatches. Once again, like, Rebecca's one of the most active women in Genesis. Like, we have Sarah who like negotiates with trying to get an heir, and the whole thing with Hagar is Sarah's idea, but she still goes through Abraham to do that. This is Rebecca just calling the shots and making the decisions. She's not checking with her husband. She is deceiving her husband, which makes her a very active character. And so, and she doesn't ask her son. It literally uses the word, she commanded Jacob to do these things. And so we have I'm going to cook the food. Like, I know my husband's favorite food. I'm going to cook it for him. And Jacob kind of pushes back. He actually initially says, "No, I'm afraid. Like, I don't want to be cursed. I don't want this to come back and bite me. I would rather not be blessed than be cursed." And then she responds in kind, saying, may your curse be upon me if it happens. So what do you think of the plan itself of, I'll make the food, we'll cover you in hairy fabric, we'll dress you in your brother's clothes, and you just have to go along with it? Is it a good plan?
Worked out.
It worked. Well, it apparently worked, but Isaac would have, does a goat feel like a person? I mean, no. He'd have to be pretty, he'd have to say, gosh, you really must want my blessing. Because
and the thing that surprised you'd think Isaac must be pretty far gone. And yet when Jacob first appears, he says, "How did you get back so soon?"
Yeah.
I mean, he
knows.
Obviously knew something was, he sends Esau out, and 2 minutes later he's back with a full cooked meal, which he's gone out and killed and prepared, and he knows that. That's
true.
And right out of the gate, he's like, "This sounds like Jacob." Like there seems to be an acknowledgement that like he knows something's going on and he chooses to ignore it.
Yeah, but Jacob responds that the Lord gave me this success. So is that enough to convince Isaac? Oh yeah, then it must be okay.
There's also a question if that phrase, is he actually lying? Or is it literally, or is that the one truthful thing he's saying? The Lord is granting me success.
Well, talking about truthful, this thing about how to read the Bible, and I probably have lost the page now, but it goes over the sentences about who are you, my son? And it talks about how the Hebrew wouldn't have had any stops or starts of sentences. And so you could interpret it as, who are you? My son? And then when he says, I am, is he lying? He's not lying, so there's quite a discussion about that in this book as to how to interpret just that one sentence, or is it two little sentences? And did he maybe lie the first part of it and not lie the second part of it? Pretty fascinating.
They needed some commas.
Right, it needed punctuation, which was put in later, and as Chris tells us, they just divide things up wherever they want to.
It's not just that they needed punctuation. In the oldest version of the manuscripts, there's not spaces between the letters.
Or, yeah.
They don't even block out words,
Mm.
because if you listening to me speak right now, I am not actually pausing between the sounds that I'm making coming out of my mouth.
Mhm.
We hear pauses between words because we're used to reading. It actually took a long time to put breaks between words. Like well into Latin do we actually start spacing out words. So even in the Greek, it's really hard. It's like deciphering actually where certain words end and begin is really weird, because it's just a continuous string of letters.
Yeah, I wish he would have told us when. He just says it went on for centuries with nothing to break it up.
Yep. So yeah, there's a question. There's really we have done our best to kind of break up the words and kind of create a sentence that semi makes sense. But the question really, no matter how you cut the cake, there is some amount of deceit. And I don't think there's a way you can grammar away the fact that Jacob is 100% truthful, because he's not. He's just not. In the end, even if he's bending the truth like Abraham did, he is not. He is intentionally obscuring the truth to get his way.
Bible study lesson. Can I call you back? Okay. Okay, bye-bye.
So here's the question of repercussions. So there's two levels of repercussions that we can kind of dig into a little bit. The first is Rebecca. Rebecca's the mastermind behind this whole situation. This is a little bit because I know where the story goes. The repercussions for Rebecca are not stated outright, but she says that she's going to take on the responsibility for the curse or for any negative thing that happens. What do we see? What repercussions do we actually see in this story that she actually has to take responsibility for? Oh, bless you.
I would suppose Jacob's deceit. I mean, the fact that, she hatched the plan. I mean, it's sort of her idea. So she's got to take responsibility for that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Esau says, I'm going to kill my brother. And Rebecca overhears it.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so what is the secondary, once Esau decides I'm going to kill my brother, what does Rebecca once again overhears it and once again responds to it? What does she have to do in order to save? I mean, she makes the comment, I don't want to lose you both.
Oh.
She sends him away. She sends Jacob away.
She sends her favorite son away.
Mhm.
Mary Ellen, yeah.
Well,
Oh no, is it not
Yeah.
unmuting?
she didn't unmute.
So easy.
I think she's trying to though.
Yeah, if you've got the little dots up at the top of your own box, that's such an easy spot to.
Yeah. Okay,
I did it.
yay!
We're trying to stay in mute so that it's easier for you guys. Apparently you're getting some feedback, but then to unmute, it's like saying, button, listen to me. Anyway, repeat the question, would you, Chris?
It's we're thinking about the repercussions that Rebecca has to face, and one of them being after her plan of deceit, she sends Jacob away. Who's her favorite son?
Mm-hmm. But okay, he's the one she can control.
Mm-hmm.
She has no power over Esau. So to separate them, I wish I knew what was coming because I can only.
You can't.
But to separate them and stop Esau's plan, whatever, she has to do this.
Mhm.
But in the long run, I see her as a very strong-minded woman from the get-go when she was chosen as the bride, and she, stood up against her parents who wanted them to stay for 2 more weeks. She's been a woman who's determined her own destiny since she came into the picture. And so, her, I want to use the word machinations, the background, what she's doing, it doesn't surprise me at all. And I'm betting that in their life story, this is how she operates,
Mhm.
So that's my comment. I lost my train of thought.
It's all good. The reality is, and this is where I say it doesn't say it explicitly, so I'll give you a clue into the rest of the story. This is the last time she'll see Jacob.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
That is the consequence that she has to live with. She sends her son away and she doesn't get to see him again. And he's her favorite.
But she kept him alive.
Mm-hmm. She also kept Esau alive. This one is also something to read between the lines with, because she's worried for both of her sons. The reality is, if Esau does kill Jacob, there are rules of the land and he would be tried as a murderer and put to death. If Esau kills Jacob, then Esau will be executed for his crimes. She would lose both of her sons.
Lose both her sons, she says.
Yeah, she says, why should I be bereft of you both in one day?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, she secures Jacob the blessing, the patriarchal blessing, but then she sends Jacob away and she has to live with Esau for the rest of her life and his wives that she doesn't like.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the why should I lose both of you in one day?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She, the other one of the details that struck me was when Esau says, don't you have more than one blessing? He's so hurt and sad.
Yeah.
Isaac doesn't care.
So let's actually talk about the blessings themselves. Because they are operating under a very specific set of terms
Sure.
that is very contextually bound. So we're at the point, let's see, what verse am I at? Verse 27. Isaac decides evidently he's going to roll over and just go with the plan, whether he realizes what's going on or not. Like I said, I see him kind of as a wet noodle or just like a paper boat floating along the river. So he he eats the food, and evidently it's good. He does the trick, and he turns to his son and says, the smell of the sun is like this. The smell of my son is like the smell of the fields that the Lord has blessed. So out of the gate, we have this comparison of like, you smell like a blessing. And then it goes into the actual blessing. May God give you the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth, plenty of grain and wine. Let people serve you, nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brother. May your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be anyone who curses you, and be blessed anyone who blesses you. So what do we think of the blessing itself?
Got a lot of power.
Mhm.
Yeah, very comprehensive.
Yeah, what elements are we seeing in there? What exactly is being conferred onto him through this?
Everything,
Mhm,
Mm-hmm.
everything.
mhm.
Yeah, he's leadership, you know,
He will lead the nations.
he's going to be king.
Mhm.
Well, the first one is a dew of heaven. I would think that would mean that heaven's on his side, that even God is on his side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the dew of heaven, so heaven's on your side. It also is like, may the weather be favorable to you. The fatness of the earth, that's talking about animals. May your animals be nice and fat. You have grain and wine, so you're talking about agriculture. May the agriculture always be on your side. And then the people serve you. Every other nation bow down to you. And specifically, be the Lord over your brother. That's the kicker. You are going to be the one on top. Your mother's sons, the plural there, I was looking at an explanation. They say that it's likely just poetry to make it rhyme better in the Hebrew.
You think he was referring specifically to Esau and Isaac in that blessing? Not all the men of the realm?
I mean, or something, there's poetic license is the thing, like brothers
Okay.
either being like, yeah, in that like, be Lord over your kindred, or like, yeah, it's you, yes.
Yeah, that's
Not
what this,
necessarily meant to be taken directly literally. Clay,
yeah,
what were
that's
you
what
saying?
this book indicates is
Okay.
that be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. This indicated phrase appears to have been aimed specifically at the Edomites, descendants of Jacob's brother.
Jacob, yeah,
Mhm.
So into perpetuity
Esau.
in ancestry.
Yeah, so in perpetuity. So once again, this is kind of setting up the dynamic between the Israelites and the Edomites we're going to see later on.
Okay.
But then at the end, we have the blessing, bless everyone who blesses you, curse everyone who curses you, which is in the original Abraham covenant. So we kind of have that carryover from Abraham that's being passed down to. The unfortunate thing is with that kind of formula, if Esau was actually successful at hating his brother, he would actually reap the bad side of curse those who cursed you. And so there is immediate repercussions to this blessing. So I want you all to think about for a moment about the implications of this kind of proclamation in a society that does not have written contracts. What is the importance, do you imagine, of this kind of blessing when you neither can read nor do you write things down?
I suppose somebody's got to run out and tell the people.
Mm-hmm. What weight do words say when there's like no record of them in a way. Like when we, like this meeting right here, it's being recorded. It's being like, not only is it being recorded, it is going to be uploaded to YouTube, and then people, as long as the internet exists, these words are going to exist. We have a record of all of it. This is a world with no internet, no video recording, no one's really writing this down. So a proclamation holds different weight.
It has to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, did anybody hear this besides Jacob and Isaac? Was someone listening in, like maybe Rebecca listening in, or Esau?
There was probably servants around that the servants probably heard it. Yeah.
Or were these the words that were expected to be said? And the fact that anyone knows that Isaac gave the blessing, that this is probably what it would have said.
So it,
Like, is it formulamatic? You know what I mean?
an equivalent to that comes off the top of my head is, I mean, I give a similar benediction every week. I came up with my own benediction, that one I wrote. A common benediction that I originally memorized that I really love. Mary Ellen, can I put you on mute again? Okay. Sorry, I was hearing myself, and when I start hearing myself, I lose focus. The one that I know is like, may the road rise to greet you, may the rain fall softly upon your shoulder, or is it softly upon your field? May the wind blow gently at your back, and may God surround you wherever you may go. It's a very Celtic saying, and it was used as a blessing when people come and go. And yeah, you know the words. I haven't said it recently, so my memorization of it is kind of sketchy, but I assume you all knew the words that I was hinting at, even if you don't know them verbatim, right?
Yes.
So because this is formulaic, yeah, this blessing might already be in the culture. So that's a very real possibility. Yeah, Mary Ellen.
I didn't get it.
All right, but I don't know if it's time for this or not, but can we skip to 39 and discuss this section?
Yes. One more fact to bring it into the situation, and then I'm just going to turn it over to you. The other reality of a verbal only society is your words have to mean something. If your only record of things happening is you saying them, you speak them into existence, and that's given a lot more weight. Contracts are verbal. Your word has to mean something. So the blessing isn't just a casual thing you say to be like, hey, do well. It is a literal contract, because that's the only record they have. So with that in mind, let's go to the other one. Mary Ellen, what are you thinking about the other side of it?
Just to respond to what you were saying, you know, we as a society used to value the shaking of a hand. If you shook your hand on an agreement, it was supposed to be honored. We've gotten away from that, and contracts and suing and all sorts of things to change the intent of it. But that still is in my memory of how recently your verbal agreement held forth. So anyway, that's anyway. Okay. We're in 38. Esau said to his father, have you only one blessing, father? Bless me also, father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. All right. Isaac has a different plan, but the part that drew my attention was verse 40. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you break loose, you shall break his yoke from his neck, from your neck. This is prophetic, and kind of he's focusing on Esau, not dismissing him. So that's why I wanted to bring it up. All right, we can mute me again.
Well, not yet, because I have actually a question for you.
Okay.
There's a character that this kind of phrase has already been said to. Who does it remind you of?
Would it be Cain and Abel?
So there is an echo of Cain and Abel, of two brothers, and
Yeah.
one of them getting blessed and the other wanting to kill each other. So yeah, echo of Cain and Abel. There's another one I'm thinking of though.
Okay.
Who's Isaac's brother?
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Good son,
Ishmael.
Ishmael.
Right.
What was told to Ishmael?
So yeah. Anyway, I'll bow out, but I that struck me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So once again, we have this, so one brother gets blessed and the other, like, you kind of get the patriarchal lineage. And on the other side, it was told to Ishmael as well that you will live by the sword. He is told he will be a wild ass of a man, and kind of have that interaction where it's like, there's maybe going to be some conflict here, but you are going to be free of your brother, kind of a thing. And we see that echoed again of, you shall live by the sword. But this one seems a little bit more like Esau's going to be underneath him, but there's going to be something that happens where he is going to break free from it.
There's also, okay, if Rebecca never sees her son Jacob again, in here it says, you shall serve your brother. So is brother literally Jacob, or is brother, you shall serve your community or your nation or something like that? And then when you break loose, prophetic, you shall break his yoke from your neck. So what's the use of brother here? How universal is it?
Both.
Both. Oh.
So Jacob and Esau will see each other again. It's just by the time they come together again, both of their parents will be dead. Jacob will not see his parents alive. But the brothers will have a reunion, and this is why I say keep this in your back pocket, because I'm not going to tell you how that goes. But we can see that Esau has some character development here, right? All of a sudden, he's like realizing what he lost. He's coming to terms of like, I've been deceived. Oh, this is the like all of a sudden he's seeing repercussions, and he's going to continue his development off screen. So he will do the work to break the yoke from his brother's neck, from his brother's yoke from around his neck. And the question I will have for you in a few weeks is that a literal servitude, or is that an emotional servitude? And I want you to keep that in mind, but we're not going to answer that now because I don't want to tell you how the story goes. But the very prophetic thing is, this is also talking about people groups. So there will be time where the Israelites will serve or will rule over Edom, but Edom will break loose and become a nation unto themselves. So there is a bit where it's talking about the two brothers in the story itself, but it's also talking about the nation of Israel and the nation of Edom and their relationship with each other. So that's a both and. It's not necessarily Esau will serve the local people as much. It is in that context talking about Jacob himself. You will be under the rule of Jacob.
Mhm.
But going back a little bit to something I mentioned at the beginning of my comment about kind of Esau's character development. Up until this point, he's kind of been doing what he likes to do. He goes out and hunts. He spends the time the way he wants. He was evidently foolish enough to give his birthright away, and now he's been tricked out of this one. How do we see him change in this story? Like, what do you see dawning in his realization? Do we see him kind of grow up a little bit, and in what ways? Mhm.
Well, he certainly changes, or at least voices what he's going to do. I'm going to kill my brother as soon as my father dies, you know. So this is the first evidence that that I'm aware of, that he is now going to take action against what's been done to him.
Yeah. Yeah, where all of a sudden something has happened where it has weight, and he understands that it has weight. He doesn't like despise, or he doesn't throw it away frivolously like he did before. He understands that, like, yeah, I lost something that meant something to me.
Me?
Go for it.
There's also, when he married his two wives, I'm sure that was breaking away from the family. I don't think his father would have did approve, whatever. So he went out on his own. I don't agree that planning to kill his brother, shows any sign of growth, maturity, because the result was he would be killed. We're not planning ahead here. This is an immediate emotional response, and that to me doesn't show maturity. So
we're taking maturity one step at a time here. He's still a hothead.
Oh yeah.
Well, he shows action. He shows a plan to further himself. When he asked Jacob for a bowl of stew because he was hungry, he said, that's not worth anything. Now, all of a sudden, he's come to the realization that what he's given up is worth something. And it's worth enough that he's going to kill his own brother. Now, that shows determination. Now, if you don't want to call it maturity, it's because it's not a very good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, Mary Ellen?
Well, there's also thinking could be that if I can't have this, neither can you. We see a lot of that in revenge throughout history, that, even in our personal lives, people still do this. If I can't have my ex-girlfriend, then neither can you. And so that could be part of what he's thinking.
So looking at the time, we are getting close to the end of the hour. So yeah, we see Esau's wrestling, if nothing else. He is still making bad decisions, but there seems to be a little bit more agency, or agency, maybe not necessarily in a good sense, but in the sense that he understands at least what's been taken from him, that he assumed was going to be his. And sometimes, if that sometimes is your first step, is you realize, oh, something has been taken from me, is even that realization of like, there was a promise that I thought was always going to be there, and it actually turns out that it can be taken away from me. To like get you to actually think about where you're heading. So like I said, he hatches a bad plan. His mother once again foils his plan. His mother is always ahead of him, evidently. She is very smart, sends him away. But the last little bit, I know I told you to read to the end of the chapter. I actually want to go just a little bit further, because once again, I don't like how these chapters are broken up. And I think it makes sense to read a few verses into 28. So bear with me here. So it kind of flips back to Rebecca's point of view, especially concerning Esau's marriage. That she makes the comment to Isaac, I am weary of my life because of these Hittite women. So she literally like hates how things are going. And it flips into an alternative version of why Jacob leaves. Once again, the language indicates that this is a different story that they just smushed onto the end of it. It's thought that this comes from the priestly source that likes to keep the genealogical records. And so this version of the story, which is spliced at the end of it, which is probably actually taken out of context and should have been at the beginning of this story.
Yeah.
You can see how it sandwiches. But here we get the alternative version where Rebecca's complaint is not about Jacob stealing a blessing and doing it a deceitful way. She just doesn't like the Hittite women. And so she says, well, we're going to send Jacob away just to make sure he marries the good woman. And this is the alternative version. So at the beginning of 28, we see Isaac call Jacob in, and we get a different version of the blessing. Once again, the thought is that by marrying Hittite women, Esau forfeited the blessing in this version. So this was a forfeited blessing because of a hasty marriage. And so the blessing, then you got to keep it in the family. And so Jacob says this, you shall not marry one of these Canaanite women. Go to one of Padam Aram, to the house of Bethuel for your mother's father, and take a wife from there, one of the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and numerous, that you may become a company of people. May he give you the blessing of Abraham. Once again, we see the patriarchal blessing, and here's the words we already know. To you and your offspring with you, take possession of the land where you now live as an alien, land that God gave to Abraham. And thus Isaac sent Jacob away and went to Pad-aram to Laban, son of Bethuel of the Aramean, brother of Rebekah, Jacob and Esau's mother. Different reason why Jacob leaves. He leaves just to get married in this one little story. We see the very common formula of the Abrahamic blessing that talks about offspring, blessing, and land. And once again, we see Laban appear. I told you we would see Laban again. And if you remember, he's the one trying to get Rebecca to stay when we meet Rebecca. So now Jacob's being pushed in his direction, this time at the blessing of his father, not from the conniving version or the conniving ideas of his mother.
If this is the priestly, you said this is a priestly version of this, an explanation. What is the other one? Is that? What sources?
The majority of Genesis is predominantly the J source, the Yahweh source. And that is because that is seen part of the southern kingdom where Jerusalem is. And so that one's the stronger tradition.
Okay.
So this one, the priestly source, is notorious for making things cleaner, nicer, not as backstabby. And so we get kind of a rehabilitated Jacob who's just following his dad's orders. So
okay,
we will return to that next time. I just wanted to make sure that we knew that there was a different version of the story right afterwards. But with that, can I pray us out?
Yes.
All right, let us pray. Good and gracious God, you know, as much as we would love to be people who do no wrong, people who are effortlessly able to follow your will and do things in a way that we would see upstanding. We know that, we are flawed people that are far too often wanting to get to where we want to go by our own means. We see a story of Jacob and Rebekah where they are acting very human. They're looking out for their own interest, and yet somehow, God, you are in the story working with them. So God, we turn to you today knowing that even when we are less than perfect people, you work with us still. You bless us and keep us safe. You give us ideas and you help us work through a complicated world. And sometimes, God, that means we choose the less than ideal option, but we know, especially by this story, that it doesn't mean that you abandon us, but instead that you are willing to work with and through our flaws so that we may still be a blessing to the world and be blessed through working with you. So I ask that you bless this group for this next week. Be the guidance that they need when they need it, and help us all to be that blessing the best way we know how. I pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Thank you all so much. We'll continue next week with continuing on with Jacob. Or wait, no, it's the first of the month. I'll see you in 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Okay, all right.
All right. See you guys.
Thank you.